we think that thing will bring us, and that's why we want it? You see, when we really think about it honestly, it's really not the things we're pursuing that we want. Those are simply a path to something deeper that we hope to achieve by getting whatever that thing is. And if that's the case, maybe it's important that we ask ourselves, are the things that we're pursuing, do they really even have any chance to produce the underlying thing we're really hoping for in pursuing them? Because if not, it's possible we may be wasting our time. Kind of like these guys pursuing gold. Listen, I want to make two bold statements to you tonight. And I hope they'll forever be tattooed on your mind. The first one is this: if God is not the center of all your pursuits, they have a 100% chance of failing to bring you what you're hoping for in the end. Listen, it's not that you may not get what you're pursuing. You may very well get whatever you're pursuing. But if God's not at the center of it, it has a 100% chance of failing to produce what you're hoping it would produce. And please don't misunderstand either. I'm not saying God has to be the only pursuit in your life. I'm saying that if He's not the central pursuit, the one that is helping shape all of your pursuits, then the things you're pursuing have absolutely no chance of producing the deeper needs that you're hoping that they'll bring you in your life. You say, well, Mike, that is a pretty bold statement. How can you say something like that? Well, you know, when you think about it, it's really pretty easy to prove. Let me give you an example. How many of you guys, if you wanted a nice, juicy apple, picked fresh off the tree, man, you're so excited about it, you're dreaming about it, your mouth is watering, how many of you would go find a pine tree to look for that apple? Probably not going to do that, right? Because apples don't grow on pine trees. In fact, it is completely impossible for a pine tree to produce an apple. They have no power to produce apples because they're not the source of apples. The source of apples is an apple tree, right? Listen, this is a very simple truth. I think we all get the point. Now let's apply that to the understanding of the things that we pursue in life. When we look at the underlying things that we really want in life, things like love, things like joy, things like peace, things like satisfaction, where do those things grow? Who or what is the source of them? Because if we apply that same logic, the only way we're going to find them is to go to the source. Well, you know, in my Bible, Galatians 5:22, among many other verses, says that things like love, joy, and peace are a fruit of God's Spirit, not our circumstances. What that means is that God is the source of those things that we so deeply crave. The things that we're pursuing, circumstantial things with the hopes that they'll produce, are really things that are found in the Lord. Here's what I want you to realize. That means that your circumstances don't have the power to bring you peace, because they're not the source of it. It's just as crazy to look at something circumstantial or earthly to produce something that only God can produce. It's just as crazy to do that as it is to look for an apple on a pine tree. Because God is the source of things like that. That means that if we really want those things, we have to go to Him because they don't grow anywhere else. And I wonder if some of us, maybe we've been distracted into looking in the wrong place and we're spinning our wheels. Listen, you don't believe me? Just find somebody in life that has everything you think you want to be happy. And then see if it's working for them. Listen, most of us, we think, well, here's the deal, Mike, I could be like these actors and actresses and movie stars and, you know, the musicians and athletes, and I'd have money, I'd have popularity and fame. I'd be totally happy. Okay, well, let's look at these guys. How many guys know when you look at all the musicians and actors and actresses, they have the best family lives, the happiest marriages, the lowest percentage of drug use. It's working great for them. Right? Well, listen, if those kind of circumstances really brought a peaceful, happy, incredible life, then they would surely have them. Listen, come on. We've all seen this too, even in our own lives. I remember when I was about 12 years old, they came out with this incredible invention called Nintendo. And I remember watching on TV and seeing the Super Mario Brothers jump and run. And I told God, if you will give me a Nintendo, I will never ask you for anything again. I will have no need in life for the rest of my life if you will just satisfy this one desire of a Nintendo. And listen, I'm here today to tell you I got a Nintendo and I still have needs today, okay? It did not solve everything. Listen, each of us can attest to that. In fact, we have all the time examples, a tragic example that I just heard about not long ago of a couple in Virginia that won the lottery. In fact, at the time they won the lottery, was back in 2002, $315 million. And these guys, I mean, surely you think you win $315 million, the rest of your life's going to be a cakewalk. Instant happiness. Well, as we're discussing tonight, and as always proves true, those kind of things don't automatically lead to happiness because they don't have the power to produce it. These guys had a daughter and a granddaughter whom they dearly loved. You see her right there, her name is Brandy. She was 16 years old. And they decided they wanted to show her their love by spoiling her rotten. And so they actually bought her, their granddaughter, and their daughter a custom home. And they actually bought her 4 cars and gave her a $2,000 a month allowance. Okay. Unfortunately, that money opened up a whole new set of options for her, and she began to get involved in drug and alcohol abuse. There began to be some crazy things going on at the home, and finally it ended up in her OD, passing away. And we see the turmoil that was brought to the family. In fact, 4 years after she passed away, their daughter ended up ODing and passing away too, so they lost their granddaughter and their daughter. And there was an interview where they actually were interviewing these guys and talking to them, the people that won the lottery. And it was amazing to me. The guy literally said, I wish we would have torn that ticket up. $315 million. And this guy's realizing head on, you know what? These things don't produce life. No matter how good it seems to be. In fact, when I tell you something, there was a guy named Solomon, lived thousands of years ago, and we know he was the wisest person to ever live. The Bible tells us this. What most people don't know is he was also the richest person to ever live. I want you to hear these words of wisdom from him, and I hope it will stick with you. In Ecclesiastes 2:10, he said this. He said, I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. Here's what he's saying. Everything I ever even thought of that I could want, I got. He says, my heart took delight in all my labor, and this was the reward for my toil. While I was doing it, I was excited because I thought it would produce something, right? The wanting being better than the getting, but watch what happens. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind, and nothing was gained under the sun. Listen, here's the point I want you to realize. It's an indisputable fact. Whether it's gold or any other earthly treasure, it's never going to produce the underlying things that we hope for in life. The things that we most deeply desire. You know, maybe Jesus was a pretty smart guy after all. When in Matthew chapter 6, verses 31 through 33, he said, don't worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? He said, pagans run after all these things. Basically, people that don't know Jesus, that don't have another option, they run after these things. But once you know God, he said, don't do that. Here's what he says. He says, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Jesus says, listen, you put me in the center of your life. You make me the center of your priorities. And guess what? All the things that you're really searching for, I'll produce. It may not be through the natural things of life that you think. It may be, it may not be, but I'll produce them as you put me in the center of your life. And I'll tell you what, you think about that, I'll give you another bold statement. First one is, if Jesus is not in the center of all your pursuits, they're never going to produce what you're hoping for. I don't care how good looking she is. I don't care how great of a circumstance it is. I don't care what logic you give it. It's not going to work because they don't have the power to produce that in your life. Only Jesus does. The second bold statement I'll make to you is this. If you will make God the center of all your pursuits, you have a 100% chance of getting deep down inside the things that you're hoping for. Not the circumstantial things, but the fruits of the Spirit, the things we discussed, the love, the peace, the joy, things like that that God produces. When you make Him the center of your life, those things are going to be produced in you. You say, Mike, that sounds like a pretty bold statement too. How can you say that? Well, thankfully, Jesus said it first, so I can just piggyback on Him. He said this in John 4:13 through 14, some profound verses. Jesus replied, anyone who drinks this water will soon become thirsty again. Here's what he's saying. He's making a metaphor or an example to our physical bodies that we drink water and we get thirsty again, so we need more water. And Jesus is making a correlation to our soul because how many of you know our souls thirst as well? The reason why you strive to be popular or accepted or loved by others or things is because our soul is thirsty for something. And Jesus is making an analogy saying, if you fill your soul with things like this natural water, you're going to thirst again. But watch this. He says this, he said, but those who drink the water that I give will never be thirsty again.